I, 26F, am a writer and have been trying to get my novel published for 3 years now. I've been working on it ever since I was 19 and finally finished writing when I was 23. In the meantime, I graduated as a literature major and also got a job in an advertising company. It doesn't pay much, but I'm okay with that because I know my novel is going to make it all worth it in the end. The only issue with this is my mother. My mother, 48F, absolutely hates the fact that I chose to pursue writing as a career because of how unstable it is, and she herself grew up poor, so money means a lot more to her. She'd never approved of my decision to take up literature as a major because she thought it was a pointless degree, and we had so many fights about it before my dad was finally able to convince her. Unfortunately, he passed away 2 years ago from a sudden heart attack, and now, I have nobody on my side when it comes to my mother, and it's been tough. I have to visit her for dinner every Wednesday and every single week, without fail. She reminds me that I need to start looking for better paying jobs and quit all this writing nonsense because it'll never work out for me. For a while, honestly, it even seemed true because I was getting back nothing but rejection letters from publishers about my novel. So a month ago, I sent out one last final draft of my novel once again, and I'd made up my mind that if it didn't work out for me this time, then I'd stop working on this novel altogether and focus entirely on finding a better job. Besides, I don't think I could just keep listening to my mother's crib about how I was wasting my life and all the money that she and my dad had put into my education at this dead-end job and my pointless novel. It really got under my skin that she had almost no faith in me and my talent, and it hurt, no matter how much I tried to just brush it off as concern. Which is why I concluded that if I still got rejected this time around, then I'd be done with this once and for all. However, as fate would have it, 3 days ago I received an email and a call from a particular publisher that was known for my genre of books and stories, and they told me that they loved my book and were willing to publish it. I was on cloud 9 when I heard back from them and couldn't believe that this was finally happening. I'd waited almost 3 years to hear some positive news while working hard at a job I had no interest in just to make ends meet, so this was a huge victory for me. The very next day, I was supposed to meet my mom for dinner, and I decided to keep this news under wraps so that I could surprise her. I was pretty excited to tell her because she'd been hounding me for years and years about doing something better with my life, since my writing gig would apparently never work out for me, so this would finally put an end to all of that. We had dinner and it was a little more silent than usual because for some reason, she wasn't picking on me and my career choices like she usually did, but I didn't think much of it. After we were done, I thought that it was finally time to tell her the big news, and I was quite nervous as well, but somehow, I just managed to blurt out that I had life-altering news to tell her. Before I could even say anything more, though, Mom just turned to me and told me that she already knew whatever I was about to tell her and she had something more important to discuss with me. That kinda threw me off since I didn't know how exactly she'd find out about my big news, but then she went into her room and brought out an unopened letter from the publishers that I'd heard from. I'd probably accidentally used my old address, which is why the letter had been sent to her instead of me. It hadn't been opened yet, so I knew that there was no possible way that she'd know what I was about to tell her, and just continued staring at her in confusion. She went on to say that she didn't even need to open the letter to know the contents inside it, since she already knew that my manuscript had been rejected yet again. I could feel my heart drop the second she said that, because it confirmed my belief that she really didn't have any faith in me, and it was simply the worst feeling ever. She continued talking and said that she already knew that my big news would be the fact that I was quitting my job to focus on writing full time so that I'd finally be able to get published somewhere, and she said that she wasn't going to stand for that at all. She said that she wouldn't support me for the rest of my life, and if I wanted to quit my job then I'd be on my own, since she wasn't going to encourage this nonsense anymore. I don't know where she got that idea from because I'd literally never said or even hinted at that. She just assumed the worst of me. Even if I had, hypothetically, quit my job, I would still not ask my mother for help. I hadn't even asked her for help even once in these past few years, and neither had she offered it, so I don't know what exactly the issue here was and where she was coming up with this stuff from. I was at a loss of words and didn't even know how to react to whatever she was saying, so I just sat through her rant without saying a word. She went on to say that she'd had enough of me treating my life as a joke, and that now if I didn't clean up my act, she'd be forced to cut me out of her life because she just couldn't bring herself to see me bringing about my own decline like this. That was when I finally managed to come up with something to say, and in a fit of anger, I told her that she didn't need to bother with me anymore and that I would be cutting her out of my life now. She looked taken aback because so far, I'd never really said anything to her whenever she'd start talking about my job, because I never had anything to say. I didn't have anything to defend myself with, since the cards really were stacked against me before this. I did work at a job where I didn't have a future and was making way less than other people my age. I was just scraping by, and yet, I was only focused on writing a novel that seemed to be leading nowhere. So I couldn't argue with my mother because, on some level, she was right. It did sting a lot though, the fact that instead of trying to uplift me and encourage me to chase after my dreams, she constantly kept reminding me of my shortcomings and demanded that I give up on something I'd worked so hard towards. I couldn't imagine any other parent who'd be doing this to their own child, truth be told. And the thing she said about supporting me really rubbed me the wrong way, because as far as I'm concerned, she's never supported me. Let alone financially, she's never even supported me mentally, and in fact, has always done her best to bring me down and discourage me from doing what I want to do. So even if she did cut me off, it really wouldn't make much of a difference to me and would probably even improve my mental health. Which is why I just went ahead and told her that I'd be cutting her off now, but I knew that I had to let her know the big news that I wanted to share with her as well and make sure that she knew that she was wrong. I wasn't as talentless as she believed and I knew what I was doing. So I opened the letter that had come in the mail, shoved it towards her, and told her to read it. The publishers that approved my manuscript were really reputed as well, so I knew that this letter would be a total slap in the face for my mother, and I was right. Her expression soured as she read the letter, and it was so incredibly satisfying to see that. She took a few seconds and then pasted this phony smile on her face. I could tell that this was tough for her. Then she tried to congratulate me and told me to just forget whatever she'd said to me so far, and even dared to say that she'd always known that I had it in me. I was so pissed off by the whole act that I told her to simply not bother to even pretend that she was pleased with this and left while she tried to stop me. I was furious that day and haven't spoken to her since, even though she called me several times, but I've just let it ring. She even sent me a message saying that she was just trying to look out for me and that she was sorry for upsetting me when I didn't respond to her calls. She said that she takes back everything that she'd told me that day and wants me to forgive her for everything since it only came from a place of concern and she wasn't trying to make me feel ashamed of my choices or anything. However, so far, she's only ever made me feel small and shameful about what I do and has never once tried to say a positive word to me or uplift me when I'm down. So I don't feel particularly forgiving right now and have no intention of getting back to her anytime soon. It's been years and years of her telling me that my writing talent will never get me anywhere, and it really just hurts to know that your own mother doesn't think you're worth anything. It totally messed up my sense of worth and self-esteem, which is why I don't think I want to forgive her at all or even speak to her right now. So Ida, for not wanting to forgive my mother after she kept criticizing my career choices for years? Update 1. It's been 4 days since I last spoke to my mother. I told her in a text that I appreciated her attempts to apologize, but after all that had happened, I needed some time away from her and she said that she understood. So we haven't spoken in a while now and it's been weird. I felt particularly lonely tonight and I was about to dress up and head out to my mother's place since all my friends were either partying or busy with their partners/kids, but then remembered that we weren't speaking right now. I know I was the one who asked for space, but now, I'm the one who feels lonely. I've been trying to keep myself distracted, but now that I've quit my job and the contract meeting with my publishers isn't for another week, I've got nothing much going on for me either. Maybe I'll just text my mom and talk things through with her today or tomorrow. Update 2. So, well, I spoke to my mother, and as much as I wish that I could say we worked things out and it's all fine now, it's not. In fact, things might even have gotten worse from when we started, and the sad thing is, I can't even blame her entirely. I went to her house last evening and she was pretty welcoming and was trying to be nice, probably trying to make up for whatever she'd said. I was also feeling a little more open to her apologies because I'd thought about my mother's perspective as well, and she wasn't wrong to worry about me. Maybe she could have been a little less harsh about what she said, but at the end of the day, she did grow up poor and had to face a lot of hardships to get to where she is today, and she simply didn't want me to go through the same things as she had too. She'd always tried to teach me the importance of being independent, especially as a woman, and had even set a great example for me herself. She was the managing director of a company and I knew how hard she'd worked to get there and respected her for it. In fact, part of the reason that I refused to borrow money from anyone at all, including my own mother, was the fact that she was so headstrong that it inspired me to work the same way and make whatever sacrifices that I needed to be successful. So yeah, whatever happens between us on a personal level, I'll still always respect my mother for who she is as a person. Anyway, once we got to talking, she apologized for being so hard on me and I told her that it was fine since she was just trying to look out for me. She could have been kinder about it, but she'd always been the more tough love kind of parent, and she said she was sorry about that as well and promised to be more empathetic towards me from now onwards, which was sweet. After that, though, she said something along the lines of how skeptical she was that someone would actually publish my work, which is why she just assumed that it must have been bad news in the letter, and that was what led to this entire fiasco. I was kind of put off by her saying that she was skeptical about someone wanting to publish whatever I'd written and asked her what she meant by that because it sure didn't sound like a compliment. She got really uncomfortable then and tried to evade the question, but I pressed on and she finally admitted that she just didn't think that I was a good writer. She thought that my work wasn't very captivating and even my language was hard to understand. I was absolutely devastated at that moment because this was my own mother telling me that she didn't like the work that I'd put my heart and soul into. Whenever I'd ask her how she liked what I'd written, she'd always be very vague with her response and just limit herself to saying that it was nice. All this time, I thought that she genuinely felt my work was good but didn't hype it up too much so that I stayed grounded, but as it turns out, she just didn't like it and was trying to spare my feelings. Now I know that everyone, including my mom, is allowed to have their personal opinion on things, and it's perfectly fine for them to not like what I write, but I'm not gonna lie, this just sucks. The fact that not even my own mother likes my work makes me very skeptical about my future as an author. I was obviously hurt by what she said and couldn't even be bothered to hide it since I felt like she was insulting me all over again. She told me that she was obviously happy to see me succeed and maybe it was just her own personal opinion which probably wouldn't be shared by others, so I didn't need to worry, but that did nothing for me. The damage had already been done, and even though I'm embarrassed about it now, I was pretty hysterical in the aftermath of what she said. I was sobbing hard and kept accusing her of being an awful mother who couldn't even be bothered to support her own daughter. She tried her best to pacify me and take back her words, but of course, there's no way she could take back what she said, and I was too upset to actually pay attention to what she was saying. I cried for around 15 minutes while she tried to calm me down, and then, as soon as I was able to compose myself, I ran out of the house and drove myself home. As soon as I got back home, I broke into tears once more because I was honestly just shattered that my mother didn't like my work. I think I might have cried myself to sleep and woke up at around midnight, all cried out. My mother had sent me several texts in the meantime, trying to take back her words and apologize for whatever she'd said. She'd even called me 12 times, but my phone was on silent and I just slept through it all. It's been hours since then and she's still been sending me texts to make up for what she said, but I'm incredibly hurt. I thought about everything that's happened long and hard, and while I do think what she said was hurtful, I don't exactly blame her right now. I mean, I was pretty torn up about it and accused her of a lot of things back when I was crying, but I don't know how to feel anymore. To dislike my work is one thing, but to say it to my face while I'm banking on this novel to save me from going back to another dead-end job, that's just mean. I don't know what to say to my mother right now. I don't think I have anything to say to her anymore, truth be told. I don't hate her or anything and never will, but this is just hard to deal with and I can't do this right now. Like I said earlier, I quit my job at the advertising company for something better, so I'm a mess right now and I don't need this. Update 3. So it's been 3 days since I visited my mother and she told me that she didn't like my work. We haven't spoken in person yet, but yesterday, I did answer when she called me really late at night. I hadn't checked her messages at all because I just wanted to stay away from everything related to her, to forget about whatever she'd said and pretend it never happened. She tried to apologize on the call as well, but I told her to cut it out since I really wasn't in the mood to discuss something so heavy right now, so we stuck to casual small talk. I told her that I'd quit my job a few days back and was looking for a better one since now I could finally devote more of my time to actually working, now that I had a definitive answer for what was going to happen to my novel. Hopefully, it'll get published and sell well, and then I'd be able to switch to writing full time, but until then, I needed a better job. I'd already landed an interview for a writer at a magazine. So it'd be a pretty busy week because first, I'd have my meeting with the publishers about my contract, and then 2 days after that, I'd have my interview. My mother offered to help me out with money for the time being, but I declined, not just because of the tense situation but also because thankfully, I had some money saved aside and it'd last me at least a few weeks if I spent it frugally, which really wasn't difficult for me because I wasn't much of a spendthrift anyway. She was rather awkward and uncomfortable the entire time, so eventually, I just told her that I wanted to go to sleep so that we could just hang up and end this miserable conversation. I'm still really upset and I can't seem to get what she said out of my head. I don't know if I'm being overly sensitive or not, but it's just tough for me right now. Maybe I'll feel better once I have something to work on, but I hardly think that's going to fix my relationship with my mother. I mean, this was the woman whom I'd looked up to my entire life and had always tried to win her approval, but nothing I ever did was good enough. And now, I don't think anything is ever going to cut it. I understand that my mother had pinned a lot of hopes on me and wanted me to be an even bigger success story than her, but I don't think she even believes that I can ever achieve anything at all. And that's something that I just cannot accept. I don't want to make her out to be an evil mother or whatever, it's just a complicated situation and I'm not sure if I'm up for dealings with this right now. I'm just so freaking tired of everything. Update 4. My mother came by this morning and I was kinda shocked to see her because, after last night's dead conversation, I wasn't expecting things to be fixed so soon. I invited her in and needless to say, the atmosphere was really tense and weird, so I decided to make us some coffee so that I could stay in the kitchen by myself and compose myself before we talked about anything. I took my time, but obviously, I did have to go out eventually, and when I did, I was shocked to see that my mother was silently crying on the couch. It felt weird walking in on something like that and I felt like I was intruding, so I told her that I had coffee for her, but she still couldn't stop her tears. So I went and sat beside her and hugged her for several minutes while she cried and apologized to me over and over again. She said that she'd been a terrible mother to me and had been so caught up in trying to control my life that she'd forgotten to be a good mom, and she was terribly apologetic about it as well. She told me to take her opinion about my work lightly because, as she herself said, she wasn't a reader, so her opinion doesn't count anyway. And she also added that she loved me more than anything in the world, and knowing that she'd caused me so much pain throughout the years was eating away at her, so she desperately needed to fix things with me. We cried a lot and there were way too many, sorry to even count, but the bottom line is, we decided to try therapy to have a healthier relationship. Weekly dinners mean nothing if we don't actually try to resolve the bitterness and resentment, and this definitely is our healthiest bet right now to deal with whatever we're feeling. So that's one thing out of my way, and honestly, after that heartfelt conversation with Mom, I'm feeling a lot better already. I'm a lot more hopeful about the future now, and I can't wait to finalize my book deal and get that job that I've been waiting for. Life seems to be on track for me right now and I couldn't be happier about it.